Good afternoon. My name is Spencer Wyckoff, and I'm a second-year management major. We are fortunate to have Assurant as our sponsor for this afternoon's Impact session and Impact Media Solutions as our webcasting partner. Imagine for a moment what your initial thoughts might be as you cross the finish line of your first triathlon. For me, I think it would be, where's a cold drink in my bed? However, for our guest speaker today, it would most likely be how he would integrate his triathlon experience into his long-range business plan. We are privileged today to have Chuck Bengochea, President and CEO of HoneyBaked Ham, as our guest. HoneyBaked Ham is a company that specializes in the production and sale of delicious deli meats and sides. Their quality products, which include their signature sweet crunchy glaze, are some of the many reasons for their tremendous success and brand awareness. I can see some of you salivating as I speak. After graduating from Cornell University with a BA in economics, Chuck has enjoyed a successful career. He is the former controller of the Fountain Division of Coca-Cola and is a certified public accountant. He joined HoneyBaked Ham in 1995, climbed the corporate ladder, and has become the first CEO outside of the founding family. Along with a successful business career, Chuck is also a determined and dedicated athlete. He has competed in multiple Ironman triathlons throughout the entire world. Now, without further ado, please give a warm Georgia Tech welcome to our guest, Chuck Bengochea.
Thank you, Spencer. This is fun. Spencer, thank you for that. Before I start, I had a view of what the audience might be, and I'd like to just ask if you would raise your hand and calibrate me. If you're an undergraduate student, would you just raise your hand? Wow, majority graduate student? Okay, so 99% or so of the folks in here are students. I did design my talk around that. I designed my talk around the assumption that it was relatively young folks who would be entering into the world shortly. And I'm glad that's the case. For those of you who are not in that profile, I may not have much to say that's of any value to you. And there's the door. You won't hurt my feelings. No, I hope that there's a nugget or two in what I have to say that will be of value. In 1995, I was at Coke, and I was the controller, as Spencer said, of the Fountain Division. It's about a $2 billion division. And I'd been there for 6+ years, 7 years. I had 3 promotions in that time, and I was pretty highly thought of, and I thought highly of them. It was a great company, is a great company. And they came up to me and said, we'd like you to go to Spain. We'd like you to be the CFO of Bottling Group in Spain. And I said, wow, I'm Cuban. I speak Spanish fluently, grew up in South Florida. Been to Spain, loved Spain, thought, wow, that'd be awesome. But I had a problem with that. I had 4 kids. 2 of them were boys that were playing East Cobb baseball. And some of you may know what that is, it's traveling ball. In fact, your baseball team here has several folks from East Cobb in it. And so I went to the leadership of the company. I said, I would love to do that. And it would excite me, and it's a good thing for my career. It's an international company, but I can't do it right now. I've got 2 boys who think they're going to be pro ball players. I happen to know they're not going to be pro ball players, but that's what they think, and I'm not going to pull them away from that. And they said, well, I understand what you're saying, but you have to make a sacrifice. I was talking to an individual, and we won't talk about names, who said, I was sent to the Philippines, didn't want to go, but I went. And I said, I appreciate that, and we all have different decisions we have to make. I'm not going. And they said, no, we need you to go. And I said, well, I need to resign. Now, footnote, totally unrelated to the story, once I resigned, then I got all sorts of offers to stay in Atlanta. And that was a lesson that I learned. But that isn't the point of my story. The point of my story is, what's the relevance to you? The only relevance to you is that I really believe that what I have to say is going to be different from most of the speakers that you have. I'm really not interested today in equipping your mind. There are so many people that can do a better job of that than I can. I typically speak on leadership. I'll speak on brand development. I'll speak on strategy development. And there are folks who are more talented. There's a gentleman sitting in the audience that I met with a couple weeks ago by the name of Ron Sharbo. He's going to be a speaker for you on April 2nd. He's vice chairman of an advertising agency. He can do a whole lot better job talking to you about brand development than I can. But I thought long and hard about this talk. I've thought more about this talk than probably any I've delivered. I will tell you that in the last 10 years, I've probably delivered 100. And I could not put my finger on why that was the case. Actually tossed and turned about it. And the reason is, I want to connect with your hearts. If I think about what I can uniquely bring you today, it's really only my experiences, my mistakes, and the learnings that I've made from them. The other things that I could bring you, there are others that I believe are as equipped, if not more equipped. So that's the journey we're going to go on today. Is the title of the talk today is Reflections from the Rearview Mirror. Lessons learned on the way home. I'm 50. I still do triathlons. I feel like I'm 21. Mirror tells me I'm clearly 50. And so statistically, I'm more than halfway home to the grave. And in that 30-year period of work, I have done some things well, been very blessed, and I have done some things poorly, and hopefully learned on the way. That's what you're going to get from me. And I hope it's of value. You'll be the judge of that. I'd like to, however, spend a few minutes and talk to you about HoneyBaked. I'm going to do it briefly. It's not the core of my talk, but I will say in my Q&A session, please feel free to ask anything about our strategy, our brand, organizational leadership, anything you want to talk about. Fair game. Fair game on the personal side as well, since I'm opening that door with my talk today. Surprise slice machine was invented in '49. The gentleman that invented it was Harry Huntslier. Tried to sell the technology. He New York World's Fair and everything. Nobody bought it. We have suppliers today that desperately wish they would have bought it back then, but they didn't. And in '57, he decided he had to do something with it, so he bought a company in Detroit called the HoneyBaked Ham Company, and that was our foundation. The structure is kind of complicated and frankly dysfunctional. The founder, Harry Huntslier, had 4 daughters, and he separated the geography of the United States among those 4 daughters. The state of California is its own entity. It was an original business partner. Back in '57, it wasn't that big a deal. There was no internet. Catalog wasn't a big deal. And it was really about your retail box, and so being in one state over another, not a big deal. It becomes a huge deal when business becomes seamless. And so we're forever challenged by the strategic implications of different strategies and things like that. Roughly 400 stores, 285 corporate, 120 or so franchise, and there is a national board that controls those families, but that board is not a typical board of directors. It has a limited scope. It licenses the rights to us, and it makes sure that the trademark is consistently applied and that the specs on our product are consistent across the country. That's really their only role. They don't go beyond that. I talked about the 5 divisions. I'm the CEO of the Georgia division, which is pretty much the contiguous South. Georgia, not a surprise with that. And as I tease, it's really kind of the contiguous South and then a southern version of the Lewis and Clark expedition out the Pacific Ocean. So we actually bought Oregon, and we've been buying states along the way, which is how we got there. But we finally hit the Pacific. The operating structure for Georgia, last slide on HoneyBaked, and then we'll move on, is this. We operate in a couple of channels. We have the retail channel, which is what you would probably most know us for. It's a box that sells hams and turkeys and things like that. We do a tremendous gifting and catering business in terms of its volume and revenue for us and income, very profitable. We have 119 corporate stores in the Georgia division. And then we manage franchise stores. But for the franchise business, we do transcend those boundaries and we manage the whole country. Franchising is strictly a matter of scale. The volumes or the margins are thin. You have to have scale. So as we pleaded when we did a couple acquisitions of Heavenly and Hickory, let's not make the same mistake Grandpa made. Let's do this nationally, and then we'll share the profits among the different territories. So we manage it. We share the profits. If it's an Ohio territory, we give them their profits. We have a vibrant catalog web, but I tell you, it could be much more. There are a lot of things that we can't do with national alliances and marketing because we're only permitted in our 14 states. It's very limiting to us. I'm very proud of my team. I will tell you that in our 14 states, we're bigger than some of the rest of the catalogs put together. So our team has done a great job. And on the Georgia side, we're 5X the next company. So we've got a pretty strong team doing a great job. Our latest, and this may be a question you guys want to ask me, we have pushed in the last year aggressively into alternative channels. We've been traditionally a very conservative, risk-averse company, do it one thing very, very well, and continue to do it well. We have really moved into alternative channels, and think about that as taking HoneyBaked everywhere it should be. So where should it be? There are places that you wouldn't expect to find us, but perhaps there are places that we should be. Should we be a cafe at an airport? Is that a good brand building? Should we be at Disney? Should we be in a branded section of the grocery store? Where should we be? And so we're pushing hard into those. And as obvious as that sounds, I think it's relatively obvious, the issue wasn't that our team didn't want to go. The issue was that that national board I was talking about didn't grant us license rights to go do that. So it felt like fighting with one arm tied behind our back at times. And finally, and this is a lot of fun too, have a really talented team. And we said, look, we can do so much with the brand, and we are. And we're making, we'll have nice growth. Did not have a good holiday this year, but nice growth and nice profits. But you know, we're still limited by the states that I just showed you. And we'd like to play in a bigger sandbox. We'd like to play in the whole country. We'd like to play international. We don't have those rights. Let's go build some brands. So we bought a cookie company, which we're having a blast with. We are launching a gifting company called Bonfetti's. It's premium, unique gift for the entertainer. We launch in June. The business plan on that's really exciting. And we're within a week of closing a deal on a barbecue company. So there's a lot of stuff going on that is exciting for us. Okay. I want to split the rest of my talk, because really the core of where my heart is for today, into two buckets. And I hope it's of value to you. I frankly run the risk that it's not, but we'll see. First one is career advice. I think a little less controversial. It's the things that I've learned as I have performed 30 years. My career, by the way, I feel incredibly blessed. I have 8 years with GE in financial management, and I would argue that GE is one of the best. Their financial management program is one of the best programs you'd ever want to go through. And then I left GE and went to Coke, and I was at Coke for roughly 7 years, final position controller for Fountain. And then from Coke, I came over to HoneyBaked, and I've been there since '95. And what I want to share with you are the lessons learned along the way. And those are 5 points. And then I want to transition to 3 additional points, and those points are really life advice. Things that I learned way too late in life. And that if I can shortcut your learnings in any way, today would have been a valuable exercise for me. The first one seems awfully obvious. Have the courage to pursue your passion. Let me talk about that a little bit, because I would emphasize the word courage. You know, the truth is, it's easy to succumb to other people's expectations, okay? Could be your parents, and I'm all about honoring and respecting your parents, but they may have clear expectations based on either having invested in you in college or what they expect with the talent that you have. It could be the world defining what success is for you, and embedded in that would be measures that are material in some way, shape, or fashion, money, houses, cars, and that kind of stuff. And you have a fairly unique opportunity at this point in your life. You really do. When you reach 50, you could still pull the trigger, but the risks are greater, the fall is greater, and there are things that constrict you. Houses, mortgages, kids in college, and things like that. You don't have that. You're not constrained by that. You're constrained by your courage, your ability and your willingness to dream about what it is that lights you up, what it is that brings you on fire. You know, and all these, I'm going to try to share at least one personal story with you. I want to tell you something. I love where I'm at. 30 years of marriage, 4 kids, great job, and I get to do my hobbies. It's good. But I do have a regret. If I was to put up that new reality show that gives you a lie detector test, and they asked me, do you have any regrets? There would be one. I didn't pursue my passion coming out of Cornell. The reason I'm passionate about what I do is I get the privilege to lead people, not necessarily the food industry or what I'm doing. My passion was athletics and coaching. I played ball in high school, I played ball in college, team captain, always academic All-American. I was pretty good at what I did. As a catcher, I used to think deeply about strategy and what we were doing. Didn't pull the trigger. I was married, got married my freshman year. I thought it was time to move on with life. You know, had an Ivy League degree. Let's go make some money. I wish I had gotten different advice. You have that opportunity. I can't be more sincere about that. One story I'll tell you. I have a dear friend of mine in the triathlon community. He and I have been together for a long time. 8 or 9 years ago, he was a marketing executive, and he lost his job. He was I'll call him a manager. I don't know that he was an executive. He was 30 plus years old. When we were training together and riding, we were all pretty much equal talent. And then after the year of unemployment, he didn't find a job. He was a whole lot better than the rest of us. He spent the days training while we went off to work. At the end of the year, he realized he couldn't find the job that lit him up. So he talked to some friends, and he financed a triathlon shop. And it's here in Dunwoody, and it's called All Three Sports. And 8 years later, 7 years later probably, Patrick has a multi-million-dollar business, probably a top 5 triathlon shop in the world. And I don't know what he's making, but he just spent 2 weeks in Paris, and he's doing exactly what he wanted to do. And I admire him so much for that. I would challenge you to pursue your passion. And there's a point I'm going to make twice today. And I hope it sinks in with some. There is no inherent joy in money. If you pursue money for its goal, for that's the goal, you will have problems. You will be tempted in ways you shouldn't be tempted. You'll tend to end up greedy. You will make decisions that I think you regret in your relationships and other places. If tremendous success is a byproduct of your journey, then celebrate it. It's phenomenal. So have the courage to pursue your passion, not necessarily what the world would define as success for you. Figured since I was talking at Tech, I'd give you at least one equation. Job fulfillment is equal to mission plus value proposition. I'm actually quite serious about this. I don't consider it to be gospel. I don't consider it to be the only way to look at it. I'm just telling you it's my experience. Mission. What is the enterprise? And as you go through the interview process, this is what I'd love at least for you to think about. What's the mission of this organization? Is it doing something that excites me? What's its industry? What's its DNA? Is it aggressive? Is it trying to really get after something? Is it conservative? And I'm conservative, that's okay. It's just trying to provide power to a bunch of folks, which is awesome, and people need to do that. What's its mission, and how do I feel about it? Mission of HoneyBaked Ham Company is to enrich the meal experience. Enrich. It's more than just Tuesday night dinner. It's premium. The meal experience. It's families coming together. And I want to be a part of that. We're definitely not solving world hunger with that. And there are others that may be more up my DNA. I'm still, as I said, a jock. But I feel good about that. I feel good about working for an organization whose mission is to enrich the meal experience. People need to eat, and why not celebrate it in a premium way? That's the mission. The value proposition. Again, I'm not intending this to be the only way you can look at it, but I think it's a helpful way to look at it. I would encourage you as you go through this interview process, and by the way, some of you may be entrepreneurs and starting your own thing. This really doesn't necessarily apply to you. Having clarity about your mission and vision does apply to you, but this is more directed at folks who will be going through an interview process. Made up of 3 things. It's made up of culture, values, in my mind, the job itself, and I'm going to talk about each of these, and then the compensation and benefits package. So what do I mean? Now, first of all, let me say this. The size of the pie reflects my approach. Most important to me is the culture and values. But I think that's a seasons of life thing. At my season of life, I have a different perspective than perhaps you would. And that's fair. This is not the right answer. This is a way to look at it. And the desire I have for you is that you would understand that these are embedded implicitly in how you feel about your job. So what's the culture? What are its values? Values for HoneyBaked Ham? Number 1, always do the right thing, which I think is so cool. Number 2 is respect and serve others. Number 3 is my favorite. Number 3 is leave the company in better shape than when you got there. Number 4, take risks. We embedded that as a leadership team because we were so conservative. So we try to change our DNA a little bit. Number 5, grow profitably. So you need to know what the values are. And you know what? I would encourage you in the interview process. I can't tell you how many really bright people in their 30s I talk to about try to network. I have made a commitment. I will always help folks network. Who they go right to the job, right to the competencies, and they miss this upper funnel where they can really align to make sure they're a long-term fit and not just a stepping stone to another position. So the way I'd get to the culture and values, I just ask the question. Serious red flag if they can't answer it. It tells you what the culture is. You interview my team and ask them, they will tell you what the culture is. The job itself. Sure, it has a job description, and absolutely, that's what you ought to understand. But go into it with a little more awareness than I did at your age. What are you looking for? If you're looking for, if you think big corporate America is where you want to go, and GE and Coke, I mean, that's pretty big. I've been down that path. What you'll tend to find is narrower jobs that are deeper, right? So you may be the king of forecasting if you're in finance. Best on the planet, know every tool and leverage technology, and you will develop additional skills as well, by the way. I'm not being critical. You will have influencing skills. You'll have good communication skills, lots of things, presentation skills. But understand that if you go that route, it's narrower functionally, and then you get promoted and more opportunities, and there may be other rewards. If you go smaller, you tend to have a broader job, but you probably won't have the depth of the tools and the technology or the sophistication among your peers. So there are trade-offs. So look at the job. And then lastly, the compensation. Love Coke. I was there for 8 years. But I will tell you, and this is not intended as criticism, it's a statement of fact, the value proposition for Coke largely rested on that last bullet, compensation and benefits. Great environment, but they worked you incredibly hard, which no problem with that. But the comp and the benefits were so lucrative that there was almost a de facto, and don't take me literally here, but I own you. You're mine 24/7. I'd come in on Monday mornings on my way to work. I felt like I had to strap my helmet on because I had 15 voicemails. It wasn't, emails back then. It was more about voicemails. And it was ready to go. And obvious question is, didn't you do them over the weekend? Well, sometimes I did, but a lot of times I didn't. And that's okay. I mean, I think there's a season in your life that perhaps is more appropriate to chase what I would call success. And then maybe you transition towards significance. But be aware of it. That's the goal. Be aware of it. This one is so deep to me that I hope I do it justice. I'm not sure that I will. Because what I'm talking about is not a how-to on leadership. Again, I would send you to Barnes & Noble. They have so many great books on leadership. That is not my goal. My goal is to change your paradigm a little bit, depending on where you're at. I want you to understand that leadership is a privilege, okay? And leadership is not about you, okay? Leadership is about the group of folks or department, or in my case, company, 5,000 people when we gear up for the holidays at HoneyBaked Ham. I serve them. Okay. Now, I want to emphasize it. It's not about me. If it were about you, then what you do is chase the power and the compensation, all that comes with it. What you need to hear from me is it's the privilege that you get to take this group of people or this department and lead them in a common direction when they have different personalities, they have different skill sets, and lead them in a common direction to do extraordinary things, to do more than they thought they could do. And if you're failing, you need to leave. You don't need to be asked to leave. It is beyond my comprehension how you can fail as shareholders and the owners of a company and get a multi-million-dollar payout. You get that payout when you drive shareholder price and drive value, awesome. You got movie stars making $25 million, why shouldn't a CEO make lots of money? But if you fail, you should be, I've told my boss 50 times that it is my deepest hope that she will never have to fire me. If I fail those 5,000 people, I need to resign and I need to move on. Because it's not about me. It's about the organization that I'm leading. Okay? And I will tell you this, and in this, I don't know if I'll get emotional or not, but I'm already getting emotional. I have believed this in my soul forever, but the guy that drives this home for me is my son. I have a 25-year-old son who is an officer in the United States Marine Corps who leaves for Iraq Friday. He's an infantry officer. There is no doubt that he will be in harm's way. His job is a dangerous job. Since 1988, I have been skiing with my two boys. Love my girls, take them on cruises, take them to New York, not invited on the guy ski trip. Okay? Guy ski trip is about aggressive, steep skiing, not greens, and, the lodge. We've gone every year. This will be the first year we didn't go. The one thing the Marines do, and I suspect the other branches as well, the one thing that they did, they said, look, you're headed to harm's way. You get 2 weeks off. Go home and love on your family. He called me and said, I'm coming home, Dad. I said, oh, that's so awesome, buddy. I said, we can do it. We can go skiing. We don't have to break the chain. And he said, I can't do that, Dad. I said, what do you mean you can't do that? He said, Dad, I've been training with my men for 7 months. It is my job to lead them into battle. I could not forgive myself if anything happened to me. He gets it. It's about his men. His job is to finish the mission and bring them home safely. That's his job, and that's the way he views his job. Thankfully, most of us don't have to do that. But our job is to accomplish the mission, whatever the goal is, on behalf of the people we lead. Not to get big paychecks. Those are byproducts of a job well done. Have a teachable point of view. There's 5 here. This is 4. I cannot tell you how impressive it is when, as the senior executive of my company, I travel and visit our young managers, and they want to wrestle strategically with me. I don't care if they have the experience. I don't care if they're missing 50% of the equation or 80% of the equation. That's an absolute true story. I go back to my office, I write them a note of encouragement, and I put a note in my file of their name. And I follow up with their leadership. You guys are graduating from a phenomenal university, great reputation, and are challenging yourselves intellectually. The tendency as you start your job is to acknowledge, you're low on the totem pole and everybody knows what they're doing, which hopefully is true, and I'm just going to do what I'm told. I graduated from Cornell, it's an elite university. That was my attitude. I finally figured out somewhere along the way that, I have a point of view. Have a teachable point of view. The word teachable means be able to translate it. Have a deep conviction about it, and then be able to translate it. And when senior management comes out or your bosses come out and say, look, I got the assignment, I'll go do it, but I have these 3 questions. I've got customers coming into my store every day, and what we're doing doesn't seem to make any sense to them. That's awesome. Have a teachable point of view. The last thing is focus on excellence. I'm not sure that half of what I'm saying today is standard textbook stuff, and I'm not that current on it, so I don't know. It could be that, the guidance is to have clarity of where you're going in your career, and I guess that makes a lot of sense, frankly. I never did that. There was not a time in my career where I anticipated the next job or dreamed of the next job. That might be an exaggeration. I probably did dream of a job from time to time. But my point is I didn't lay awake thinking about it. My challenge to you is that the responsibility you have as you enter the workforce is to focus on excellence. It's to add economic value. I don't care what role you're in, whether it's in driving sales, driving margin, improving productivity, whatever your skill set and your competency is, that's the goal. The byproduct will be the successes of your career. One story on that, and I don't know if this story may not sound right, but when I came to HoneyBaked, I was recruited from the COO of the HoneyBaked Company, and within a year he had actually been released. And so I guess by default I was number 2 at the business at that point. But about a year or two later, my boss, CEO, the granddaughter, brilliant lady, said, "This resume came across my desk. What do you think?" And I looked at it and I knew the gentleman. World-class talent, absolute world-class talent. There was no doubt that that person could add value to our company. I said, we need to try to hire this person. And when she fired the COO, she had said, "You're on track for president. A couple of years, I'd like for you to be the president." And I said, "Wow, that's great. I appreciate that. We'll work hard to try to earn that." This gentleman came in, it wasn't but 6 months, and she basically said, "No, he's going to be the president. You're not." I was so okay with that. Number one, I didn't think I was ready. We're going to talk about awareness here in a minute. But number two, my job was to drive economic value. Now, are there times where you leave? I mean, I left Coke. I told you that story. I'm not telling you to leave or not leave. I'm telling you that daily focus on today, my value creation will be more than yesterday. 2 years later, that gentleman moved on, was fired. I got the presidency. The interesting thing is, there was no doubt in my mind I was ready, and then I had done it in an honorable way. And we've succeeded. We've done some good things. So focus on excellence. I want to transition to 3 remaining bullets. And the reason I chose these 3 is that they are deeply personal to me. The next 3 that you see were not learned by me, absorbed, and I'm in the process of learning until I was in my late 30s and 40s. And it was a wasted years before that. And it's going to challenge you deeply, and you may vehemently disagree with someone I'm about to say, and that is absolutely okay with me. My whole goal from today is to challenge you in a couple areas related to the heart. No problem with your disagreement. Here's number 1. There is great joy in giving. When I was young, your age, I thought I was the center of the universe. And I'll tell the guys who are sitting in here, it tends to be more of a guy trait. And I say that sincerely. I thought the world revolved around me. I thought that people should do what I needed to do, when I wanted to do, and that I thought that they should think I was a superstar. I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit. But I'm making a pretty important point. And I chased those things that I thought would give me satisfaction. This lesson is the real deal, guys. When you do that, and it's natural as you're younger, okay, you will run into an endless treadmill of how much is enough. I think the reason the papers and the media are filled with crazy Hollywood celebrities and all sorts of other things is because they get everything they want. And it's never satisfying. There's no deep and abiding joy in it, I promise you. You want deep, abiding joy. Learn to give your time, your talent, and your treasure. I held on so tight, especially my money. I held on so tight to that. The freedom I experienced when I started letting go of it is beyond expression. It would no longer control me. Where your treasure is where your heart's going to be. So if your treasure is around material things, if your treasure is around money, if your treasure is around those kinds of things, that's where your heart's going to be. And that's how you're going to behave. I don't believe you can go from wherever you may be, I have no idea where you're at, to radical giving and giving your time and giving overnight. I wouldn't even ask you to consider that. I'm asking you to be aware of the principle at an earlier age than I figured out, and to take baby steps. That's all I'm asking you to do. Move directionally. Make a difference. Give yourself away. Had a neat meeting. I met a guy 2 weeks ago who I'd never known. Some of the older folks here who are sports junkies may know, but he's a guy by the name of Danny Bugs. He was an All-American wide receiver at West Virginia, 12 years in the NFL, terrific athlete, and then coached at West Virginia. Fell in love with him as soon as I met him. We were at a lunch in the hotel across the street. Danny has given all that up, and he's serving inner city kids in Atlanta. He's on fire. He's more free than the rest of the world. Great joy in giving. Pride is a two-edged sword. I still struggle with this one big time. The good side of pride is obvious, isn't it? Pride over a job well done, an accomplishment, a milestone, a promotion. If New England or New York win, they should feel pride. I mean, that's the best football team in the world. That's good. No problem with that. Celebrate it. There's a dark side to pride. You know what it is? It's the pride that keeps you from being authentic. Everybody in this room has challenges. I'll call them gaps. If you look to your left, you look to your right, you may think they have it all together, but we all have our challenges. We have gaps. And the reason is that we're human. The sooner you figure out that it's okay to have gaps, the more free you will be. I cannot tell you from my heart how many years I painted a mask. I wanted you to think I was Superman. And it is so much energy, and it is so much work to operate that way. Don't do it. Be authentic. It's freeing. Acknowledge and admit what you don't do well. You know what the advantage of that is? You won't get in positions that you can't succeed in. I tell my team all the time, all the organization, gaps are totally acceptable. What's a gap? A deficiency. I do this well, I don't do that well. Good, let's go work on that. Or let me put somebody alongside you who does do that well. No problem with gaps. You know what's not acceptable? Blind spots. Not acceptable. We live in a society that is not reflective enough, doesn't examine their life enough. Examine your life. What do you do well? What don't you do well? I don't necessarily believe you should celebrate your gaps, but you ought not hide from them. They are what they are. The interest that I was a CPA, right? There's not a single thing I like about accounting. Not one. No exaggeration. I tried to pretend I was an attention to detail guy. Hate details. I really do. Miserable. When I finally figured out, I love painting pictures. I love strategy. I love inspiring people. You all do that other stuff. It was fun. Pride is a two-edged sword. Last one. Bring it home. The by far most important one. The one thing. You all are so young you won't appreciate it. Who here saw the movie City Slickers? Half of you? Did anybody who saw the movie remember the one thing? Anybody? I can't. Let me frame up. I'm going to show you a video in a second. Let me frame up what it's about. Billy Crystal is a businessman in New York and going through a midlife crisis. And not particularly happy in his work, not particularly happy in his marriage, and has not succeeded in answering any of the key questions of life. So he's going to seek wisdom, and he's going to do it from a cowboy. He's going to go to a dude ranch out west. And Jack Palance, I don't know if you all know him. Again, most of you are younger than this, but Jack Palance is the cowboy. Perfectly role cast for this. So Jack Palance tells him that the secret to life is the one thing. Before you start, there was one word of profanity. I apologize very much to you especially, and to anybody who's offended. I'm actually offended by it, but I couldn't edit it out.
Do you know what the secret of life is?
No, what?
This.
Your finger?
One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean shit.
That's great, but what's the one thing?
That's what you gotta figure out.
So the one thing. For my life, I have figured out the one thing. One thing is to pursue God. Listen to me. I'm not telling you what your religious conviction should be. I want to be so clear about that. I am not. I'm telling you that the most important question that you should wrestle with is there God? And if there is, what's He like? We live in a day and age that is 24/7 stimulation. Electronics, you can text all night long. It's like virtual chat rooms all night long. Your video lights you up. Everything we do, the internet, the access to the internet is phenomenal. But we don't have downtime. We don't have reflective time. It's not like years ago, and I don't want to go back, by the way. There's nothing about today's age that I would give up. I love the things I just described. But that sitting down with a blank piece of paper, or in my case, a glass of wine out, and saying, what's this all about? We don't do that because we're 24/7 bombarded. And that is wrong. It's a shame. 1992, I wrestled with this question. It wasn't important in my life until then. 15 years ago? 16 years ago. My personal decision was to surrender my life to Jesus Christ. Your decision is up to you. And this is what I want to say to you. That spectrum could go from atheism, born-again Christian, or any other religion. That is not what I'm here to tell you. And I believe that. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to tell you that no matter what it is, it's the most important thought process you'll go through. And number two, don't assume that any of those positions don't require faith. They all require faith. Maybe a de facto position you back into, but it's faith. On my side, it's a faith in something that's unseen. I think you would agree with that. If you want to be an atheist, it's a faith that all of this that came about naturally, even though it's really not fully explainable. You have to decide. Your parents probably had an influence on you. Your professors may have had an influence on you. That's awesome. But it's got to be your decision, because it's got to be a heart decision. So my challenge to you is to pursue it and land at whatever that answer is for you. I'll skip this because I've gone a little longer. This is a summary, but I do want you to know it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I am open to any questions on strategy. I'm open to any questions on what I've shared with you. I am just pleased to be here.
What is HoneyBaked's approach to social and environmental issues?
We are less involved, I appreciate the question, on the environment. A lot of our manufacturing is done by other folks, and I'm not trying to cop out on that, but I do want to talk to you about social. We have a deep heartbeat for our community. I don't know, and frankly, our heartbeat, I think, is pretty pure. We don't even advertise this, but the Hosea Williams Feed the Homeless, for example, we do all the meat for free. We just give them all the meat. Local schools where we participate, we raise money for and support the PTAs in all our communities. But we're a food company, so my real heart, be honest with you, is with the homeless. And there are people that for whatever reason, a lot of it's mental illness, some of it's alcoholism and drugs, some of it's just bad luck. But there are a lot of people that, regardless of why or how they got there, could use, the food that we have. So we work with folks like Second Harvest. We work directly with the Hosea Williams Foundation. It's his daughter who does that, and we give away food. Yes, ma'am.
I don't think it works. But that's it. Oh, there you go. How does your faith play a role in your work environment? Like, when you switch jobs, is that something you have trouble with, facing other people or working with other people as a leader? Some companies aren't as faith-friendly, I guess, as others.
If I don't answer your question, please try again. The way faith works in switching my jobs is that I won't switch without deeply praying about it and trying to understand what God's will is for me. So if I think I'm being led in a new direction, I'll go. And I haven't moved much, 3 companies in 30 years. But I will say this, it's a corollary to your question. I think a guiding principle should always be finish well. Always finish well. There's nothing you should do that you don't finish well. If you screwed up, ask for forgiveness. It's not hard. If you didn't complete the project, complete it. The new job's asking you to start right away, and that's the requirement, and you've got work to do, tell them you can't do that. If they insist, you've learned all you need to know about their DNA and their culture, haven't you? Finish well. Yes? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Good. Obviously, the specialty ham business is very seasonal, focused on holidays, things like that. How do you deal with the strategy on an individual store level to make it through the slower times of the year?
Roll a cot into the store so they can nap? And no, that is a phenomenal question. It's been an age-old challenge for us to what we call it be year-round relevant. It's really hard. Our growth framework has 3 components. Catering business, which is viable daily. Catering is business lunches, it's home consumer catering, it's platters, box lunches, all of that. Catering is not seasonal, so we have a year-round business. Second is gifting, but there's 2 elements to gifting. And gifting's not the perfect word for both, but let me use it. There is a B2B gifting at the holiday and at other special, well, at the holidays, let me leave it at that, primarily Christmas. And that's 25% of our business, so that's huge. But non-holiday, what we call gifting, you would maybe call one anothering. But those occasions when your neighbor's sick and you want to bring him a meal, you have a friend graduate from high school, a funeral, all of those are perfect occasions for our product. So rather than try to be Tuesday night's dinner, which we're not perfect for, we try to capture all of those special occasions. So catering, gifting, and then a broader definition of relevant occasions, I guess is what I call it, in addition to the core holidays. And the 3 holidays, Thanksgiving, Easter, Christmas are our core, but the mini holidays, we have some pretty big mini holidays. New Year's is huge for us. Super Bowl is huge for us. 4th of July is huge for us. Nothing like the big 3, though. I think was there a question over here? No? Yes. Oh.
You mentioned earlier that you had a regret that dates back to when you left Cornell and not pursuing your passion. I guess given how your life has evolved, where you had a wonderful career, it sounds like you got an awesome family, you're able to do whatever you want to do now. Why do you regret not going to that? Why do you regret that decision early on when, in retrospect, it seems like you made all the right moves?
Well, I appreciate that question, and don't take me too little on regret. And I'm being serious. I love where I'm at. I mean, it's a neat, my wife's my best friend. Things are going pretty well. My point is, I'd be honest with you, and maybe there's an ideal in this that doesn't exist. I go to work every day, okay? I've gone to work before where Sunday night, this was my litmus test. I don't know if this is of any value, but my litmus test was, if somewhere around 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon I started going into a funk, I knew that it probably wasn't working for me at that job. The company could have been okay, but that job. Okay. speaking from my heart, I never have that. I love it. Of course, my kids always say, well, that's because you're the boss, Dad. And so, no, that's not necessarily true. A funny story, my 27-year-old son does triathlons with me, and I'll call him up and I'll say, hey, let's go for a ride. He goes, I still report to people, Dad. I said, oh, yeah, okay. I'll go for a ride. You go work. But, yeah. I don't know if this is idealistic or not. I go to work. I don't have the funk. I love what I do. But it's work. It really is. I think if I was coaching Georgia Tech baseball, it wouldn't be work. I mean it. It's in me. I can't watch a Braves game without second-guessing every decision. And, you know, I mean, so I don't regret it in that I feel like I've landed somewhere that I wish I hadn't landed. I love where I landed. I go to work. Patrick, the all-three sports guy, he's just on fire. Now, I will say, he doesn't train anymore. He's actually running a business. So I'm better than he is again, but that's a byproduct of running your own business. So, regret's too strong a word, but I stand, by what I said to you. You're young. There's not far to fall. If there's something that lights you up, explore it. Don't let the world's requirement of success and all that, and I don't mean to waste your time, guys. If you need to leave, I'll stop. But I just read a phenomenal book. I just came from Hawaii. My son, as you know, leaves Friday. He came home for Christmas, but I just wanted one more chance to be able to tell him everything I wanted to tell him. So it's a 9-hour flight, and it was going to be an all-hour flight. It was going to be an all-night flight because I had a business meeting I had to get to. And I didn't want any deep reading stuff, so I looked in the airport in Hawaii, and they had this book by Ed Vestas, who is a mountain climber. Has anybody here ever heard that name? Oh, very cool. He's an American that has climbed all 14 8,000-foot peaks, 26,500 feet, without oxygen. Pretty amazing guy. And so I decided I'd buy the book. I don't know anything about mountain climbing, but that seems like a pretty extraordinary thing to do. He had a passion early on to mountain climb. Went to the University of Washington, graduated, did some part-time mountain guiding up Mount Rainier, and then went to vet school. 6 years, I don't know how long vet school, 6 years, 7 years vet school. Loves animals, graduated from vet school, loved what he did. But his calling was the mountains. So every year that he'd get a call to go do an Everest climb or an Annapurna climb or a K2 climb. And finally his partner said, hey, you got to make a choice. Now this is back in the 80s, no way to make a living. So he gave up being a vet, yet he wasn't married, no kids, any of that, for no money. He lived in the basement of a friend's house, $50 a month. It was a dungeon, he called it. There was no sponsorship back then, no way to make money, but he believed that he had to follow his passion. And I'm really touched by it. Now, by the way, he pursued it. And where there wasn't an economic model then, he created an economic model. He worked with a company, became sponsored athlete for them, started getting additional sponsorship, and he made a path that didn't exist. Pretty inspiring story, actually.
You mentioned your frustration with it being divided into 4 groups within the U.S., like HoneyBaked hams.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned that you had been they had been buying states to try and connect. Has there been in the past, or do you see anything in the future, possibly like mergers between any of those groups to kind of simplify the process?
Yeah, there are a lot of good potential questions today. That's the perfect one. We have, raise your hand if you've been a part of family businesses. Okay. Maybe I let your professor talk. There is a dynamic there that shouldn't exist. There is a zero-sum game, meaning a winner and a loser, that shouldn't exist. It should be what I'd call law of abundance. But you have the Georgia division, 225 plus million. The next biggest is up around 50 million. And we approach them with grace. We approach them, we share intellectual capital with them. But there is a sense of winning and losing that I can't seem to overcome. I'm actually working with some outside firms in the investment banking world to see if I can't put together a compelling call to action. I'll leave it at that, to do that. We have to do that The consumer's changed dramatically over the last 10 years. Consumer's really driven by consumer. The competitive landscape has changed dramatically for us. You can get wonderful products in the grocers and the clubs. It's not the HoneyBaked, and I say that sincerely. What we do is unique and it's expensive, and that's why the retail price is expensive, but it's good. It's very good. And if you can go to Publix, or if you can go to Whole Foods, why go to HoneyBaked? And so our core business has got some significant challenge. That's part of the reason we're going into the new channels. But it's also part of the reason why this thing should consolidate, because we've got 5 overheads. Just overnight, I could lump $10, $15 million out of the business, and need to. So we're working against that. I'm not overly optimistic.
Are there any others? Not any others? Well then.
Oh, we got one more.
One more?
Yeah.
One more, this is your last.
All right. I like your point about having a teachable point of view, and I was kind of surprised where you went with that as far as having a point of view. Yes, clearly, you're able to clearly communicate and teach it. And I found that just very recently as a blind spot. Could you give us a little more on what you do to develop that teachable point of view?
If I don't understand the question, please help me to answer it properly. I think there's an instinctive intellectual curiosity that you have to have. And then you have to have the confidence. And what I mean by that is, I know that for me, as I started, I had questions about everything and what they do. I didn't have the confidence. I talked about some of the some of the gaps and the mask that I wear. So my mask was, hey, I'm super confident, everything's cool. The reality was, I was insecure, and I didn't want to risk asking questions that I thought would be dumb questions or would get me. So there's an emotional side. You've got to be comfortable. I think if you get some clarity that the receiver is actually going to be delighted, okay? And as a career move, it's probably a good thing. Do it with respect. Do it with honor. I've got a manager at North Point, or North Point store. I get sermons from him, you know? I've started where I just delegate them on to somebody else. I don't have time, but he's a manager of my North Point store, and he writes me about everything we're doing right and wrong. And when he sees things that he thinks are inconsistent with our values, he points it out. He has clearly got it going. The grammar in the letter is not always perfect, and I overlook all that because he's got horsepower, he's got intellectual curiosity, and the confidence to write to the CEO of the company and say, this isn't working. So my challenge would be, starts with intellectual curiosity. Don't let the dots be connected. I have always felt, connect dots. That's the joy of business and of leadership. You can just do what you're told, but if you start looking at the landscape and say, okay, well, I've just told to do this. You know, I'm putting these products in our display, but no consumer's asking anything about it. So, I'm throwing it out at the end of the day. Why am I doing this? That's not a good example, but I don't know that I can add more than intellectual curiosity and the confidence to go forward with it. You should know that it's going to be perceived really, really well. You should, no matter where you start, if you ever get the privilege to have the senior executives come, you should welcome that. I find very often, I go into a store, last comment on that because I don't want to slow you down. Within 2 seconds of walking into a store, I have a 100% conviction of how that store is being led. If cleanliness, organization, okay, let's assume that's a given. If their staff can't wait for a moment with me, I know they have great leadership. Because they're being delegated to, they have an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, everybody feels empowered to do a role, CEO's coming and they want to talk. I'll go into stores and it's a monologue with the manager and nobody wants to come forward. Manager didn't equip them, they don't really know what the strategies are, they're intimidated the CEO is coming and it's not working. So the point is, have the confidence that it really is a breath of fresh air to find 25, 26, 27-year-old people who want to disagree with you. That's awesome. I think that was it. Okay.
Where do you live in East Cobb? I live in East Cobb also.
I play ball in East Cobb. I actually live in Roswell.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, where do you live?
Right off the lower Roswell. I live right